let's say we want to have more people like Bob, like for example riflemen. Let's say all 3 of these guys are riflemen. Usually what people tended to do is they would make a rifleman loadout. Let's say this is a rifleman loadout. They'd click OK, they'd save it, they'd click OK, they'd go to the next guy, edit loadout, load the loadout, save it again, and do it that way. To make it a bit faster, you just select all of them, click on the guy that already has the correct loadout, click edit loadout, click OK, and tada, they all have the exact same loadout now. Careful though, this is not reversible. So I can't go undo and it won't get rid of their loadout. So be very careful with using this little trick, because if you accidentally grab the wrong guy, if this was a medic and we accidentally changed him, you'll have to manually change him back to the loadout that you want him to have. It's not a biggie, but it's sometimes a bit annoying if you forget it. Right, next up will be the respawn. So these guys will have to have somewhere to respawn. I tend to use the respawn module just in game, where you go into the top right here in the systems and in modules, just type in respawn. It will appear under the multiplayer selection slot, and there you'll find the respawn position. Left click anywhere on the map and it'll go down. After double clicking that, or right mouse and attributes, it will show you the respawn position with its according settings. So let's call this base. What type of object should be respawned here? Infantry, usually it's always infantry. Side, at the moment this is blue for if you're doing some sort of a PvP mission and you only want this respawn point to be available to the leading team, you'd have leading side, and then only the team that is currently winning will be able to respawn here. For the moment it's only for blue for, so we'll set side to blue for. Show, who should this respawn point show to on the map? Only the side. I tend to always have it on that. There's no reason for anyone else to see it. Notification, I disabled that, otherwise you always get notification when someone respawns here. And done. That's it. That is a respawn position done. Now, this respawn will work because we have the files that I mentioned in the last video with the description.ext and the respawn equaling free, a respawn delay, respawn start, and the respawn template. If you didn't have these files, you would not be able to respawn on this point. You'd just be stuck and without respawn. If you don't want to use the description.ext, you can always go into multiplayer and set the respawn type in here. Respawn on custom position. Always select respawn position if you use modules. If you don't have this one checked and leave it just like this basically, what will happen is you will respawn in the middle of the ocean on 0-0. You will not be able to respawn afterwards either. So always make sure that if you're using the modules, you have the select respawn position, as well as what this allows for Zeuses is for the Zeuses in the live mission, they can also place down new respawn points for the players to use. So that's it. We've now got a playable file. These guys will be able to respawn on this position and they're ready to go. So you've already got a playable mission file. Now, obviously you're gonna want a Zeus. How we get a Zeus is by a different module called the Game Master module. If I can find it. Oops, come on. There we go. So Zeus, Game Master, and in here we'll find the module. This allows people to have Zeus. The owner tab is the single most important one in here. This tells who should have Zeus. So you can either use, as it says in the description, you can either use the name of a unit. So if I put Bob in here, Bob would be able to use Zeus, you would think. However, we only changed the role description. This is only how he shows up in the selection screen. This entity is not yet called Bob. That we do in the variable name. So if we now put Bob in here, anyone joining this specific slot at the moment would have Zeus powers, because the owner of this Zeus is Bob, that slot. However, if you want it to have it bound to certain people, you have to put their user ID in here. So let's say you would have a certain person or yourself have EID in here, you would now have Zeus. It doesn't matter which slot you take, if you take Bob's slot, if you take any other slot, as long as your UID is in this owner tab, you will have Zeus. Naming it doesn't really do anything, it's just a display name, but usually you have everything off with that. Forced interface is just if the guy with this ID joins the server, he will be forced into Zeus. I usually never have that on because it's not fun if you have Zeus to always be in Zeus. A different one as well is the hashtag admin logged. If we hover over that, you can see it there. Hashtag admin logged or admin voted. What that does is if you are logged in as an admin on the mission file, you will gain Zeus. This is a way of making sure that some people have Zeus even if you don't have them in the mission file. I'll usually always have one game master module down with the hashtag admin logged in here. That way, if anyone needs Zeus very fast, I can just tell them the password to the server, they can log in and they'll have Zeus because this module is down on the ground. Alright, so you now have a mission file where you can play with your friends. You've got a Zeus slot. You can start placing AI time. You've pretty much already got a playable mission. Next up is for missions that go on longer, you usually want vehicles to be able to respawn. How we do that is we place down a vehicle with people if you want to, but usually people tend to want them without the guys in them. A handy trick for that, rather than checking the box down below here, is if you hold down your left alt key, vehicles spawn without their crew in it. So this is now an empty vehicle. Now, vehicle respawns work a little bit different than player respawns. Namely, we'll need the vehicle respawn module, and in that one, by double clicking it or going into the attributes, you can set up the specific data required for this module as well. Let's say we want vehicles to respawn after 60 seconds, and if people move away from them further than 1,000 meters. This is in meters, that's in seconds. Tickets, how many times the vehicle should be allowed to respawn. Let's say this marshal is only allowed to respawn 5 times. So if it gets shot 6 times, the 6th time it won't respawn, it's gone. Expression, code that has to be executed to advanced. It's stuff for later on, is the code that should be executed on this vehicle if it respawns. Position, I'll usually have that on the starting position. There's a whole lot of different options. Usually you want that on starting position, on the oldest position. The rec, it's up to you. You can preserve the rec, delete it, or delete with an explosion effect. I usually just delete the rec. Notification, I usually have that off. Again, it's just annoying to see it pop up all the time when you're doing a mission that your Humvee has respawned at the base. Forced respawn, usually don't do that again, leave that disabled. Respawn when disabled, it's up to you. Do you want vehicles to respawn after they are immobilized? Yes or no? I usually have that off because sometimes it counts a vehicle as immobilized after it's lost like 2 or 3 wheels, and you're sitting there repairing your vehicle and suddenly it disappears into thin air. So that's not fun. So next up, this vehicle at the moment will not respawn. They're a bit different than how player respawns work. Basically, you need to tell this vehicle to now listen to this module in terms of how to respawn. We do this by selecting the vehicle, right-clicking on it, going into connect and synchronize to. You then get a blue line on your cursor, which you can connect to the module by hovering over it and left-clicking. It is now synchronized to this module, so this vehicle will listen to the respawn code of this module. So if you have a jet, for example, on the mission file, let's say that this one is a jet here. If you sync that to this one, but you want the jet to be respawning a lot slower, because it is a more powerful weapon and it shouldn't respawn as many times, you can do that, and you can change the different settings for different vehicles as well. So far we've got a pretty fun mission file. There's not a whole lot of things to do yet, but that's pretty much aesthetics, and I think most of you guys will figure that out on your own. It's just setting up units and giving them waypoints. I will cover that in later videos though. So now you've got a mission file, you've got playable slots, you've got a respawn position, you've got a Zeus, you've got respawnable vehicles even. What else could we need? Something that is rather handy to have at times is a arsenal to have the guys select their loadouts from. For an arsenal you tend to go for an ammo box, doesn't really matter, it's pretty much anything that has an inventory I tend to use. You can just use a umbrella or a fucking chair if you want to. Take any sort of ammo box, and you can, in here, you can select what items should be in here, just by going simply for the minus and plus. These items are limited, you can see how many there are in it, and if they take 11 out of this box, they'll be gone. If you go into virtual, these items are now virtually accessible, meaning there's infinite amount of numbers. If they walk over to this box, they won't get the inventory option, they will get the arsenal option, but only with these guns and these items in it. So that's a sort of way to set up a restricted arsenal. However, with the way Arma is coded, even if this arsenal is restricted, they'll still be able to load in loadouts that have items that are not in this box. An easy way to have a full arsenal is to paste a bit of code in this one. I will put the code in the description. I think I've got it in my compositions down below somewhere. There we go. Acre plus arsenal. That won't work, obviously. And I should have a box. There we go. So this code is basically making this box into a full arsenal. That way you don't have to go through every single item in the game and set them to available. You just paste this code in and you've got a full arsenal. You can equip every single item possible in the game, mods included.